Today we are going to look at an FC training series. This is something I had been planning with a few of the FC team managers for the last few months. Initial idea was that this would be a series of shorter videos on YouTube, and we'd have it as like a playlist so people could look at each part. I kind of set it up this way so it's broken down into, I think, 9 different short sections. So you'll see as we go through, some of these are going to be short, some will be longer. I thought today would be a good day, though, just to kind of go through the whole thing all at once. I'm using all of you here as my guinea pigs just to see what works and what doesn't. And maybe in the future, we will refine it a little bit to better suit YouTube. But anyhow, I am recording this now because I know this is a bit earlier in the day for a lot of people. I did not include the normal class rules slide because I was originally planning to record this not live, but normal class rules stuff in effect. Please just make sure your microphone is muted or set to push to talk. Feel free to interrupt me if you have a question that's pressing or anything. I'm happy to talk about different things. My recording is set up so it is only capturing my microphone, so if anyone else speaks, they won't be heard on the recording. No worries about that. I also do have the classroom chat open on my second window, so I can see the chat there. So if you want to just put questions in as we go, that's perfectly fine. And yeah, we'll get going here. And yes, Amfound, I guessed it was you that had hit that start class button, so thank you for doing that. Okay, so we're going to start with an overview. I'll talk about what we're going to talk about today, just so you have an idea of what's coming. This might help you with questions too, if you know something's coming up later. Basically, who is this class for? What is this designed around? My idea here is this is for people who might want to FC someday. Maybe you have already started FCing, maybe it's something you want to do in the future, maybe it's something you're just curious to learn about, but you have no intentions of. That's fine. This class is kind of for people in those roles right now, let's say. It's open. I don't require anything in advance for you coming here. Like if you don't care about PvP and you're just here because you're bored on a Monday, then that's fine. Welcome. I should note too, for anyone familiar with my classes, normally I have animations set up to show point by point through these slides, but this is like 90 slides and I can't remember everything and I didn't want to go through it. So these slides are going to be a bit more text heavy than my normal slides. I will talk through them as we go though. So yeah, today's class is for anyone who wants to FC, who has been FCing a bit, or really anyone who's just curious about it. What we're going to look at today, we're going to go through 10 different mini sections here. We're in the first one here, the intro and overview. I'm going to talk about doctrines next. This class is intended for public consumption. So this class is meant for people in any corp to be able to follow along with. Some of the things I talk about will be specific to uni, and that section 2 with the doctrines is a uni-specific one. If you're not in the uni or you don't plan to FC here, you can just kind of not pay attention for that part if you like and get back in later. But as a whole, we don't really ever talk about what doctrines we have in the uni for new FCs, so I thought it'd be useful to go over. We're going to talk about what you should do before a fleet, so what kind of prep you can do in advance with setting things up. We'll talk about form up. Form up is when you start the fleet, what you go through there, getting people into the right ships, the right roles, those kind of things. We'll talk about how to find content. We'll talk about some issues that you might have along the way with your journey. Number 7, target calling. I think this is the big one for a lot of people. I know from what I've heard from other aspiring FCs, and even when I first started FCing, target calling was my big concern, and I really wanted a class on it. So I've tried to put together something that I think will be useful here. There is no magic answer for it, I will tell you that now, but I can give you some good tips there. We'll talk about how you can end a fleet. We'll talk about debrief. And then that section 10, do it again, is mostly me just telling you to don't just FC once and give up. Keep doing it over and over. But yeah, that's roughly what we're looking at. There are some things that we're not going to talk about. So I'm not going to get into some specifics of PvP that I expect people here to hopefully already know about. So I'm not going to talk about how bubbles work or what a boosh is. I might mention those at different times, but I'm not going to go into an in-depth explanation on them. So if you don't know what those are, you can ask the question and then I will go into an explanation. But I'm kind of assuming most people here know about that stuff already. I'm not going to talk about PvE fleets at all. I'm not going to talk about the level 4 mission fleets or things like that. Today's focus is PvP here. Not going to be talking about capital ship fleets. I have not FC'd any capital ship content. I don't think I'm a good person to speak on that. And as a whole, there are no caps in Uni, right? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We all know this. I'm not going to talk about blobs fleets too much. I will talk about them a bit. We are going to discuss blobs a bit, but this is not a blobs focused class in any way. And I'm not going to talk about why you should FC. So I did teach an intro to FCing class back in the fall a couple times. There was a recording up on the university's YouTube channel even. That class is a lot of me just saying, go do it. You just need to get out of your comfort zone, go be an FC, do it. I'm not going to do that today. I'm assuming you all are here for the knowledge part. We're not going to get into the philosophies. We're not going to get into why you should do it. We're just going to say, this is how you do it. All right, and I figured I should include my journey here. I try not to make my classes about myself too much, but I thought it would help you everyone understand where I come from here, especially as we have a lot of new faces here in the uni, and I FC'd a lot of fleets in the summer and the fall last year, but I haven't FC'd much in the last few months. So if you have joined the uni in the last few months, you might be looking at me and saying, who the hell is this guy? Why is he talking about FCing? I've never seen this guy before. So roughly, I started playing a little over 2 years ago. In March 2023, I started flying in fleets, really enjoyed it. At the time, I was flying a lot in the Pachan fleets from Cryptic Charvis, who was doing daily fleets at the time. So did a lot of fleets in a short time. In the summer of 2023, I started scouting, really enjoyed that. Scouting is a great time. I was very slow to pick up FCing, I will say. If you look, I was flying PvP for over a year before I started FCing. This is not what you have to do. You can start FCing much earlier than this. Don't feel pressured to wait a long time until you're an expert at things. I waited far too long to start FCing. I should have been FCing much earlier in my journey. I did not start FCing sooner just because there were lots of other great FCs around for content. In the fall of 2023 there, I was flying Scout a lot for Clarities and Francie, if you're familiar with them. They were FCing and scouting a lot back in those days, so I flew with them. Once they both left the uni and there were no fleets, then I started FCing. Anyone that was around during that time might remember I was FCing 3 to 4 fleets a week for a while. I had so many alarms set on my phone for reminders to ping different fleets at different times. My calendar was quite busy. I was doing quite a lot of fleets in both EU and US time zone. In July of 2024, we had our PC9 eviction. This is where EVE Uni's nullsec campus was evicted. We had 72 defensive fleets in that month. 72. During that time, obviously, with 72 fleets in a month, a lot of the senior FCs were very busy and stretched out, so they started asking some of the newer FCs to step up. So I started FCing Stratops then. And near the end of that, I was asked if I was interested in FCing the final battle that we were going to have. I got a promotion to become a lead FC, one of the senior FCs on the team. And yeah, I joined in that. I was the person who led that final battle. We had over 300 people in PC9 local. We had like 5 different fleets fighting all each other there. It was a lot of fun. It was a good time. Yeah. As you can see, that's kind of quick, right? I was flying in fleets for over a year before I started FCing, and then I went from doing my first Merlin fleet to doing big stratops in the span of 2 or 3 months. I will say I came into it with a lot of experience because I had flown so much beforehand. If you've only been playing the game for a month and then you start FCing, your journey might be a little slower than this at times. I just flew a lot of DPS before I started FCing. And yeah, I've been very busy in the past 2 months in real life. I've been doing a move, doing a bunch of changes of stuff, and finally things are settled in. So yes, if you're not familiar with me because I haven't led a single PvP fleet in 2 months, that's because I haven't been around, but I'm back now. In terms of some stats too, I looked up, I have written 48 after action reports. So these are different reports that we write up after fleets. I write them up for most of my fleets. I did not write them up for a bunch of stratops, so I've obviously done a lot more than I've written there. Gideon probably has a number, but I have cost the uni tens of billions of ISK in SRP, and I have spammed the ping PvP channel a lot. Again, I don't want to make today too much about me. I just want you to know where I'm coming from. You might not recognize me because I haven't done much lately, but I swear I have seen a lot last year. Let's see. I see a few things in the chat there. And found yes, yes. I went back to the spreadsheet we had tracking, and I just looked at the number of rows. I did not manually count up to 72 fleets. I just saw that there were 72 rows there. But yeah, final fight in PC9 and Nullsec Campus was a great fight. That was a fun one. I guess one little tidbit too. The whole reason I got this, actually, I'm going to talk about later, but a big part of how I became a lead FC and got trusted with the big fleets was that I was 2 IC on a fleet where the main FC warped himself off. And then I took over because he was off grid and we needed to fight and there were bubbles. And I did a good job with target calling there, so I became a lead FC because that main FC messed up. But don't worry, we all mess up and do that. Okay, enough about me. That's the end of the intro. Let's talk doctrines. Again, this is an EVE Uni focused one specifically. I'm going to talk about the Uni doctrines. If you're not in Uni, if you're not flying our ships, you can just skip past this part. So I'm going to break it down into 3 parts. We have our roaming doctrines, we have our stratop doctrines, and then we have some specialty ones that kind of fall in their own way. I'm going to put a disclaimer here. Doctrines change a lot. New ships come and go all the time. New doctrines are created or retired. So everything I have here is current as of right now, but this could change within a week. For example, there was a new doctrine that was introduced just a week ago. So I had to quickly make a slide earlier just to quickly add that into here, just because we have one new doctrine and I know there's more changes coming. So just keep in mind that. For our roaming doctrines, we've got the Merlins, the Armor Assault Frigates, the Kiting Small Gang, the Fast Little Frigates, and the Crab Eviscerating Kikis. That's the new one. I'll kind of talk through each of those here in a bit more detail. Merlins. So Merlins are the Uni's bread and butter go-to starting doctrine. These are something we recommend new FCs start out with because they are very cheap and they can do some impressive things for how cheap they are. I know some people get a little tired of running Merlin fleets so much because Merlins are such a common thing here in the uni, but as a whole, they do well for what they are. A Merlin costs between 3 to 7 million ISK, so for a fleet of 10 Merlins, you're looking at like 50 million ISK maybe, which is the cost of like one ship. And with 10 Merlins, you can take out some decent stuff. You don't have to start with it, but this is generally what we recommend people start with. So Merlins are a cheap doctrine. They're very inexpensive. They're very easy for new players to get into. It's a very short train to fly these things. The uni skill plans even are set up so that if people are following the pyramid skill plan, they'll be able to fly this quick. Merlins are brawly. Not to get too much into backgrounds on details again, but brawly just means they fight at close range. So you orbit your enemies at 500 and shoot them there. Merlins are easy to fly because of that. They're low skills to get into, and you're just orbiting enemies at 500 and shoot them. They're wonderful for learning how to FC because they're so cheap. Nobody is going to get upset with you if you take out a fleet of Merlins and you die in a stupid way and you ask for SRP. That's a learning experience. If you take out a fleet of big, expensive battle cruisers or battleships and then you die in a stupid way, then yeah, you might get a talking to from someone on the FC team about try not to waste our money on those things. But on Merlins, yeah, no one will be upset if you're taking Merlins and doing dumb things with them. So they're a great low stress, low stakes learning fleet to take out. We do have Harpies that you can upgrade to as well for a T2 plus version, let's call them. Harpies are good, but they are also 10 times the cost of a Merlin, and I don't know if they're 10 times as better. So I generally try not to fly Harpies unless I feel we're low numbers for Merlins. I might add in a few Harpies. Oh yes, and I see a note there from Raven. Yes, don't feel obliged to whelp. As I'm talking here about whelping, whelping means you just kind of throw the fleet at something that you know is a losing fight, and you just take the fight and die. You don't have to do that, but it's a way that you can learn what you can and can't do. So Merlin's the starting fleet, the easy, cheap one to get into. A similar one you will see is the AAFs, or the Armor Assault Frigates. This is a bit of a step up. It flies similarly, and it has similar low SP options. So as Diablos is saying in chat there, you can take AAFs out as your first fleet. That would work too. It's just AAFs can be a bit more difficult to form. Merlins are very easy as a new FC to form up because you basically tell everyone get into a Merlin, T2 if you can, or T1 if you can, and Logi you get into a burst. That's it. There's like 3 ships for people to choose from. When you get into the armor assault frigates, you've got maybe a dozen ships for people to choose from. So it gets a little more complicated during form up. People aren't sure what to fly. You have to think of a lot of different ships. They do have more staying power and they are stronger than Merlins. So I think it's a good progression to go from Merlins to AAFs. But if you're comfortable taking out AAFs as your first fleet, then that's great too. The AAFs, the mainstay there is the Retribution. Retribution comes with that assault damage control that you can click and your resists become like 99% for 10 seconds or something like that. So it's got that button that makes you almost invincible for a little bit, so they can really hold grid better. They have Deacons for Logi, which are some real powerful Logi support, so they can fight longer. They are brawly as well, so you're still just right-clicking your enemies, hitting orbit, and shooting them in the face. But yeah, AFs as a whole, you just get more tools than you have with Merlins. You get more ships, more choices. In the Doctrine as well, we have some combat probers and links in there too, so you can make the ships even more effective as a whole. I put some little just cheat sheet notes here in the bottom. I know it can be tricky looking at all the options in AAF and trying to figure out what to get people into. So I always just tell people if you can fly if you want to fly DPS and you can fly the Retribution, fly that. If you can't fly the Retribution, then fly the Punisher. It's good to have a mix of some Enyos and Wolves in there as well. The Retribution, I think, comes with a point on it, but the Enyos has a scram, or the Wolf has something else. You want kind of a mix if you can, but if you end up with only Retries and Punishers, it's okay. Just maybe check your mid slots. For Logi, we have the Deacons and Inquisitors. Deacons are far better than Inquisitors. I try not to take any Inquisitors if I can, but if we're short on Deacons, or if there's some new bros on the fleet who are really eager to fly Logi, I'll take them in Inquisitors. But I would recommend trying for Deacons as much as you can there. Again, these two are great learning doctrines. These are great ones to take out for your first couple fleets, build some comfort with. Going up a bit, we have something that's a bit more advanced. We have our KSG, or Kiting Small Gang. This is a bit of a different doctrine. For those that don't know, if you look in the Uni's auth page and you go into a doctrine, you can see a little blurb written up about the doctrine itself. There's a little text box on the left that has info. If you read KSGs, it'll even kind of explain to you that KSG is not meant to be flown in quite the same way. If you've got 30 people, you're not really a small gang. KSG doesn't have Logi in it, really. You're doing mixed tank. You've got some wide ranges of ships. KSG it's a little weird to form. It's good if you're doing some small stuff. If you're going out with 5 or 10 friends and people know what they're doing, KSG can be great. If you're going out with 20 or 30 new bros who haven't flown much PvP, I would not recommend KSG in that situation. So doctrines are meant to complement each other. KSG kind of does. The ships all fight at a similar-ish range. Some of them are a bit shorter range than I'd like, and they all have similar speeds, but it's not as cohesive, let's say, as Merlin's or AAF. It is a higher skill level for pilots as well because it does require some manual piloting. For our brawling doctrines, you just right click on your enemy, you hit orbit 500, and you shoot them. Easy. For KSG, you want to find a target to align out to. So maybe you align to the sun, or maybe you align to a planet, or you align to something, and you try to keep the enemy at a specific range from you, whether that's 30 kilometers or 60 kilometers, and you shoot them while you're keeping that range. So KSG requires a lot more control and higher skills from individual pilots. It does have bigger guns as a result, right? There's battle cruisers in there. There's blinger ships than you can find in other Uni doctrines. So it's got a lot of power, but it's a lot harder to fly. So you need higher skills and higher SP from your fleet members than you do from AAF or Merlins. It can be difficult to form in Uni because of this too. The idea when the KSG Doctrine was created was that you'd have a bunch of big battle cruisers in the back shooting at the enemies, and then you'd have some anti-tackle that were in like Osprey navies and exec navies in the middle as anti-tackle to protect the big ships. Most of the time that I've farmed up KSG, I find we have like 2 or 3 big battle cruisers in the back, and then we have a lot of anti-tackle in the middle, which doesn't work so well. But your experience may vary with this. And yes, I'm just looking at chat and I'm seeing, yeah, KSG is a catalog of ships. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. It's a catalog. It's a lot of choices of ships you can take out, but they just don't fly as cohesively as the others. Yeah, I'm not saying KSG is a bad doctrine by any means. It's just it is a lot harder to FC, and it's a lot harder for your line members to fly in. I would recommend trying it at some point for sure, but just know what you're getting into with it, KSG. We also have our fast little frigates doctrine. I keep calling this a new doctrine, but I think it's been around since like October now, so it's not really new. FLF is a fun one. I like FLF. It's very fast. It's set up to be both fast for warping and for on-grid speed. So the ships are hyperspatial fit and they warp at 7 or 8 AU a second. So they're like twice as fast as a cruiser warps. And then when you're on grid, if you're in a crusader and you overheat, you can go over 7 kilometers a second. So you can go faster than maledictions and other scouting interceptors. So FLF is a good brawly doctrine and it's good for quick movements. It's very paper thin as a result. The whole thing with FLF is the speed, but it's about you can move around quick between systems, and if you're on grid with some enemies, you can bounce in and out of range with them to fight them as you like. For anyone that has gone to the NPSI fleets and has gone to Shrink Wrapped, that's led by Fun Inc. and Kiakti on Thursdays and Saturdays there, this is Uni's version of that. So this is us trying to have a very fast-moving, quick doctrine. It has all those pluses, like I said. There are some downsides. The Crusader does take interceptor skills to get into, and quite a lot of people that come on fleets in Uni won't have interceptor skills. So you will end up with a lot more Punishers or Crucifier navies, not the Crusaders, and sometimes that can hurt your DPS. You really want more people in Crusaders if you can get it. It is also paper thin. Like I said, these ships rely on their speed to survive. So if enemies start shooting you, you basically need to bounce off grid. We bring Logi with it, so there are Logi to keep people alive, but that's basically to keep people alive for a short period of time so that they can escape. But yeah, it's a fun one. It's quick moving. It comes with some E-War in the mid slots, so you can of the Crucifier navies, so you can really mess with your enemies. It's a good one to fly. It just you need to go fast, you need to think quickly, and you need your fleet to react quickly. And sometimes it doesn't have enough damage output to do the job against bigger ships. But it's a good step up from Merlins and AAF. I would recommend, again, start with Merlins and AAF, maybe try FLF after that. Once you're comfortable with those, this would probably be better to do before KSG even. In terms of ships to get people into, like I said, Crusader is the gold standard for DPS. The Punisher or Cruci Navy are good T1. I think we've had a discussion recently, and the Punisher is almost worse than the Cruci Navy in almost every aspect, though. If you look at the doctrine description, it says you should take 2 or 3 Cruci Navies and the rest Punishers for T1. But when we were running the numbers, there's a minimal DPS difference between the two, and it's a minimal skill point difference between the two, but the Cruci Navy adds a lot of E-War. So maybe double check that. Don't follow the doctrine rules of saying 2 or 3 max. Try and get people into Crusaders. If they can't fly Crusaders, get them to Cruci Navies. For Logi, we have the Thalia and the Navitas. The Navitas is so bad. It's slow. It doesn't do much Logi. Don't take Navitas unless you're absolutely desperate. Get people into Thalias. I do know warp speed changes were in a patch a month or 2 back, and the fitting team was going to do some updates here. I'm not sure if they have or not. I haven't checked in with them on that. But yeah, generally you want as many people as you can in Crusaders. You want only a couple Thalias. Again, Logi is not here to keep people alive. Logi is here to just keep them alive for 10 seconds while they can warp away. Okay, I see a note. Yeah, maybe the warp speed changes, updates have been made. Wonderful. Okay, and this is the new doctrine that was added last week. I know pretty much nothing about this doctrine because it was just added last week and there was only one fleet ran with it. But the crab eviscerating Kikis or Kek doctrine, yeah, it was flown once. They took it to Pochven. I guess they had a good time, but they had some issues with it. The idea with this one is that it can fight bigger targets. So Kikis have the trig guns that spool up damage, so they're really good at killing bigger things like marauders or capitals. So the idea with this doctrine, I believe, is that you can roam when you're light on numbers and still take on some big targets. There's some other parts to it I'm not sure on yet. Again, I've never personally flown it. I know Tsuro made an announcement within the last few days in the announcements channel that they are going to make some changes to it too. So as a whole, if you have questions about this doctrine, I would recommend just asking Tsuro about it for now. So those are our roaming doctrines. Next up, we're going to talk stratop doctrines. For those not familiar, stratops are the bigger, more important fleets. These are not roams for fun. These are doctrines that we use when we have an actual goal to accomplish, something that we need to do for the uni itself. First up is hyperkittens. Hyperkittens are there's something that it's almost a symbol of the uni, right? People know our hyperkittens. People love to see them coming. Basically, it's a bunch of Tristans that, as you can see, there's no weapons in the high slots. These are just pure drone boats. We get 60, 80, 100 people in fleet. We get them all in drones. We put drones on an enemy structure, and then we have everyone orbit the structure at 450 kilometers. And the drones just do all the work. Well, it's very hard to kill the Tristans. They're a great learning one. I know some people don't like going to hyperkitten fleets because they might call them boring. But as an FC, I would say FCing hyperkittens is very important to do at some point, just for your own experience in doing a form up with large number of people in fleet. It is very different to form up a 20-person Merlin fleet than it is a 90-person Stratop fleet. So hyperkittens are a good chance to get a try of that. They're super cheap. Hyperkittens are so cheap, like 1 or 2 million a ship or something like that. Don't look at my one with the abyssal rolled drones and the T2 stuff. That one was a joke I made the one time. But yeah, they're very cheap. They're easy to fly. Skill point wise, people just need to have like drone one skills. Pretty much everyone can fly these. Hyperkittens are hard to counter. They are set up in a way that a traditional defense fleet is not going to be able to do much to hyperkittens. The main counter for them is just Edencom ships. So we've seen this in a couple stratops recently against the Riot guys. They will bring out a Stormbringer or they'll bring out a Thunderchild. And those have basically a chain lightning weapon, so they can quickly kill the drones with those. That's pretty much the only good way to counter hyperkittens. Smart bombs can be a counter as well, but when we do high sec, we usually have someone bring an out-of-corp alt along. And if you just have one out-of-corp alt that sits next to the structure cannot smart bomb. So it cannot kill the drones with smart bombs. So we can counter smart bombs. It's just the Edencom weapons that really hurt hyperkittens. So yeah, it's a uni staple, like I said. People love to see it. Hyperkittens does rely on numbers. If you've only got 30 people in fleet, you're going to have trouble with hyperkittens. You really need a large amount of people for it to shine. And yeah, it's simple. The hardest part of hyperkittens is teaching people how to change their orbit distance to be 450 kilometers and remind them to reconnect to drones after warp. Yeah. So as a whole, hyperkittens are one you'll see. It's one we use for stratops a lot. Our last couple stratops, we haven't used it as much because we've had people that try to counter us or they bring big guns, so we want our big guns. Yeah, hyperkittens is a fun one. And like I said, it's good, easy learning experience to FC hyperkittens. In the middle, we have our cruiser doctrine, Good Omens. This is a doctrine in a weird spot, honestly. It's one that we don't fly a lot of, and it's one that you can also use for roams. So I included it in the stratop section, but you can roam with it if you want a cruiser doctrine. It does run into some issues. It's a bit harder to form up because we have so many options for refits. So we have both kiting and brawling versions of the omens, and we have different E-War swaps you can do for the mids. The brawling omens get kited out very easily. I do not like flying the brawling omens. The kiting ones can do okay, but you're still going to suffer against fast-moving opponents. Um, it's a good one to roam if you're doing something like skyhook robbing and you need cruisers for that, perhaps. They do work for structure bashes. You do need a decent number. I did a structure bash with omens, and we had like 12 omens total, I think, and it took us exactly an hour to destroy the shields on the structure. So we had a 1 hour of us just orbiting a structure, shooting it with lasers. That was extremely boring. I would not recommend doing that. Personally, for me, where Omen shines is if we're doing a strat op and we have low numbers. I think Omens comes into play. Hyperkittens does not work with 30 people. Feroxes with under 40 people is going to struggle. You need cap chain logi, you need links, you need other stuff with Feroxes. That's the next slide. Feroxes in low amount is not going to work well. So I like omens if we need to do a strat op and we have a low amount of pilots available. So yes, where omens shine is just if we don't have the numbers for a proper strat op form. This is something that happened a lot in the PC9 campaign when we had those 72 defenses. Because yeah, not everyone wanted to show up for everything when there were 72 of them in a month. So we used omens a lot in that. It's not a popular doctrine, it's not a beloved doctrine, but it has its niche in small strat ops. Feroxes. So Feroxes are the bigger one. This is Uni's sledgehammer, let's say, if we need it. So when we have a important strat op, we have something that we have to destroy the structure, we can't let it wait, or we know that the enemy is going to roll heavy, we bring out our Feroxes. Feroxes are nice, they're fun, there's a lot of firepower to them. They can fight at a decent range, they have good tank, we have Bazzi Logi with them so that we can keep them alive long. They can do a lot of DPS. Yeah, so they're a good round mix. There are some issues that come in when we do Feroxes. Basilisk Logi is hard to get into. Flying a Basilisk is a bit more higher skill, and you will find a lot of people don't have those skills. Logi Cruiser 5 is a long train, but it does help so much. So we do struggle. It is rare for us to have as many Bazzi pilots as we want in a Ferox fleet, honestly. With Feroxes, too, we get all the fun of all the support ships. So we usually have multiple linked ships. We have some recons. We have some Hicks. We do all the fun support stuff. So forming up Ferox is logistically a lot harder. When you're doing Ferox fleets, you do some pre-work in advance. You ask the FC support team for people that can fly certain snowflake roles to help out. But honestly, it's fun. I like flying the Ferox fleets. You can really fight well with them. You know, if you get contested in some of the other fleets, you're going to have trouble fighting some big fleets. But in the Feroxes, we can actually go up against some bigger ships. I see this too with Wormhole Campus. I see all the pings for when they run SBC, which we'll talk about in a minute. They have trouble getting enough Bazzi pilots for that too. It's an ongoing problem. Fly Logi, people. Everyone loves Bazzi pilots. Fly Logi. Okay, so those were our three big strat op doctrines that we run. I'm going to go into some special ones now, just to talk through quick. So, Blops. I said I wasn't going to talk about Blops fleets. I'm not really, apart from this one slide, just explaining. We have our Bombers doctrine, Cloaky Stealth Bombers. So there's the 4 racial choices. So whatever racial frigate skills you have trained, you can just fly one of those. Your choice, they're all pretty equivalent in DPS. If we were going to do bombs, then it would matter which one you flew, but for torpedoes, if you can fly any of the 4 racial ones, it works. Blops fleets are a bit more going on with them. Everyone that joins has to have Omega. Alphas cannot cloak, so alphas cannot join a Blops fleet. You must be able to cloak to join on. Blops fleets are flown differently too, right? Normally for a Blops fleet, you will have the fleet all just cloaked up, sitting somewhere waiting while there are some hunters out. And the hunters will find a target, light a Sino, and then the Blops will bridge you over there. So they're a lot different to fly. They're a lot different to FC in that regard. You can roam with blobs a bit. We've done this a couple times in Pochven because Pochven does not have local chat, so people don't know if there's 10 people in the same system as them or 100. So doing cloaky bomber fleets in Pochven can be fun. Doing it in nullsec, not as much because people will still see you in local. But in wormholes or in Pochven, you can do a non-Sino blobs fleet. The way torpedoes work, they're great for shooting big ships, but they struggle against small ones. So if you find a frigate fleet, they will destroy your blobs generally. You want to go up against marauders and capitals. Battleships are okay too. But yeah, you don't want to be trying to shoot frigates and destroyers in bombers. You're going to have a really bad time with that. I should say I keep using the term blops, and blops is used a few ways in Eve lexicon, of course. So the doctrine we call it is blops, and we talk about blops fleets. But then you'll also hear people talk about the blop ships, and that is the actual Black Op battleship itself. So like your Sin or your Redeemer or Panther or Widow. So those are called the blops. The doctrine's called blops. We use blops a few ways there. Yeah, so there's a lot going on. Blops ships do come with a bomb launcher on them. Generally in uni fleets, we have people offline that or don't even use it. It takes a bit more training to do bomb launcher. People don't need to train that. If they know what they're doing, focused void bombs are great to bring. FVBs are focused void bombs. Those do no damage, but they drain capacitor. So those are really good for taking out big ships by getting rid of their capacitor. Damage bombs aren't really used in Uni too much. For anyone that was around last year, there was a case where they were used, and Mongo the mechanic down in PC9, he got friendly fire and killed by some friendly bombs. So yeah, not something we generally do. And yeah, there's a lot of prep for a Blops fleet. Blops fleets take so much prep to set up because you need hunters with Sino 5, you need a fuel truck, you need a Blops, you need a loot truck, you need to have a lot coordinated. Definitely would not recommend FCing blops until you're well established and know what you're doing. But yeah, it's just so you know. Again, I'm just trying to go over all of our doctrines, and this is one of our doctrines here. If you're interested in blops gameplay, go check out Bombers Bar too. Bombers Bar, they even do new FC training programs on how to do blop stuff. But yeah, go join a few of their fleets, check it out. Here in Uni, Yuri runs some. His Uni tune is Hammers McGee. I think he just did one on the weekend, and I think he's got another one scheduled soon. Suro does them sometimes. But yeah, go to Bombers Bar for blops generally. Another one you'll see is GCD, or Glass Cannon Destroyers. These are ones that don't get undocked as much anymore, but this is probably our best doctrine for punching up. So if you are looking to kill an expensive ship with cheap small ships, GCDs are the way to do it. These really excel well for defending in that regard. They are cheap, they die very quick, but they do a whole lot of damage. I saw someone describe it the other day as our ganking doctrine in a way too. Yeah, if you were to gank someone, GCDs would be the way to do it if you're doing high sec ganking. Back in PC9 in nullsec, we use these as a defense option. I would not take GCDs out roaming because they just die so quick. Even with Logi, they just don't have any tank at all. And so if you go on a roam, every time you find any enemy, you're going to lose a few people. So you're just going to bleed numbers. So don't take GCDs out roaming, but if you're maybe doing a gate camp, they work great for gate camps if you're setting up a gate camp. If you are defending a structure and you have a bunch there, yeah, you can have people just reship right into them. Yeah, they're great for that. The Catalyst is the one that we generally use the most, but there's also a Cormorant in there and perhaps a Thrasher as well. I forget. But yeah, GCD, a fun one, just not a traditional doctrine, not a roaming one. We also have SBC, our shield battle cruisers. So this is a bit of a heavier doctrine as well. These fly heavy assault missiles, so this is a brawling one. They have some higher SP ones. So there's the Drake Navy, and there's Nighthawks in there. So there's some big expensive ships you can get into. Bit more skill points to get into. The issue it runs into is that it's brawling and it's not as quick as the frigate fleets. So Merlins and AAFs are good for brawling and they're quick. SBC brawls, but it goes slower. It can survive longer, but it goes slower. So if you come up against enemies who are in fast kiting ships, you're going to have trouble with that. Because of this, it's popular in wormhole space. Our wormhole campus pings SBC fleets all the time. It doesn't really get undocked out in outside of wormholes. It's mainly just used there in wormhole space. I've only ever taken a fleet out with it once. We got blobbed pretty hard by the enemy. It wasn't a great fight, but yeah, it's just one that's not as common outside of wormholes. The one big benefit of it is that, yeah, if you get people who love quoting that "Can I bring my Drake" meme, you can actually tell them yes. That's the one benefit there. We have longbow cormorants as well. These are cormorants that are set up so that they can fight at over 100 kilometers away. They're the sniper ships. You will see this pinged a bit by, oh, what's his Unitune name? We had a guy who he left uni on his main last year, but he still pings a Pachin fleet once every few weeks. Mizet, yeah, Mizet. So he pings these for Pachin. They go and they shoot some NPCs in Pachin to get standings with Triglavian and Edencom. You can use them for PvP though. I have done gate camps with longbow cormorants. You have something that can tackle enemies sitting on the gate, and you sit 100 kilometers off the gate in the cormorants, and you can shoot them. They're fun for that. They are incredibly paper thin. Like they can die in one shot from a lot of ships. So longbow cormorants are fun, but you need to keep your range. If anything gets in range to shoot you, you're dead. But at a long range, it's fun. And last but not least, we have flight deck. Flight deck are wonderful. These are kind of meant to complement other doctrines. Flight deck's in a weird spot. So flight deck are our ships that are meant for day one players to be able to get into and fly. If you have someone that can't fly a Merlin or can't fly an AAF or can't fly KSG, you can always put them in flight deck EWAR. People can fly flight deck EWAR. At max, they'll have like a 20-minute train to get level 1 of a skill. So they're great to add into other comps. The weird part that I have the big issue with here is that good EWAR takes some game knowledge to fly. You want your EWAR pilots to know how to pull range, how to keep their range from enemies, how to make sure they don't get tackled, how to bounce around a grid. You want your EWAR pilots to know who they should be using their EWAR on, right? They should know specifically. But with flight deck, we're normally putting like people who it's their very first time ever PvPing into a flight deck ship. So you end up with EWAR pilots who might not know what they're doing and die quickly. Enemies will prioritize killing EWAR ships first, generally. So it's a weird spot it's in. I love the flight deck EWAR, but I just wish we had a better way of doing it, that we didn't stick our new players in the squishiest ships that also take the most skill to figure out. Flight deck ships are generally free in Corsica Horizon, or I think there's some free in Wormhole Campus. They're very cheap to buy if you're doing G to form up, though. Very cheap. Take some of the EWAR options. Yeah, don't bring a flight deck Thorax on a fleet or any of the DPS ones. Yeah, if someone can't fly a Merlin, tell them to get into a Crucifier. It's just that easy there. And yeah, they have such low cost. Like if someone's buying one, it's like 1,000,000 ISK, but one Crucifier can change a losing fight to a winning fight. There was a fleet a few months ago, I think France EFC'd it maybe, but we fought a Vargar for a while, and Ludo was in a Crucifier, and we were just in Merlins, and we didn't manage to kill the Vargar, but we fought this Vargar for probably 5+ minutes, and nobody was dying because we had the one Crucifier just stopping the Vargar from being able to fight back. Yeah, so flight deck EWAR is wonderful to have. I heavily recommend you try to pepper some flight deck EWAR into any doctrine you take. If you're taking out Merlins, if you're taking out AAFs, taking out whatever, bring a bit of flight deck EWAR. Just, I leave you with your own conundrum there of deciding, this person doesn't know how to PvP, they've never been on a fleet before, but I'm putting them in the squishiest ship that will also be the primary target. What do I do about that? That's a problem for all of us to sort out. There are higher SP options for E-War as well that I didn't talk about here, but yeah. So that's our doctrines. A lot of doctrines to go through there. Just a note on that. You do not have to follow these. If you are taking a fleet out, you are free to ping whatever you want. If you want to take out a fleet of tornadoes, you can take out a fleet of tornadoes. If you want to take out thrashers, take out thrashers. If you want to take out Gnosis, take out Gnosis. You're allowed to take out any kind of fleets you like. Um, the main difference is that if it is one of our doctrine fleets, like those just mentioned, you will get advanced SRP for your fleet. So they will get more money back for their ship. If you take something else out, it will just get base, so they will get less money back. So if you want to go with something that is off doctrine, then I would recommend that you try to keep it cheaper, or you keep your fleet smaller, or just even offer to help pay for people's ships yourself, because you know they will get less SRP back. The exception to this, and something that I didn't put on this slide, is we do have what's called the Quaif Fund now. This is something that the FC team has offered. They have a 3 billion ISK a month fund for people to take out non-doctrine fleets. So if you do want to take something off doctrine, you can just ask Gideon or Suro or Iron Ludwig, and they can help you get sorted out there. I'm going to take out a Harpy fleet later this week. The Harpy fleet is not one of these doctrines, and that is going to be paid for by that fund, for example. So we do have money available if you want to fly something off doctrine. And a quick note, if you are going to be doing a battleship fleet, you need to get permission in advance for that for SRP. Otherwise, assume 0 SRP. Question about battle ventures. Yeah, if you ask them, I'm sure that they'd be happy to put the Quay fund towards some battle ventures for fun. Is there an application for Eve where you can theory craft doctrine composition? So PIFA will probably be what you want for individual ships, but for how ships will complement each other, I don't know of any one application. You can talk to some of the FC team managers about maybe joining the fitting team, and you can theory craft with them all day. They do a lot of that. And JPNS, I'm not sure about your Oracle. You can ask Gideon on that one there. Okay, that was a lot of doctrine stuff. I'm going to take a pause here, take a sip of my coffee, and then we're going to move on and talk about what you can do to prepare for a fleet in advance. A lot of successful fleets, or doing fleets successfully, is planning ahead and doing some things beforehand. This is something that you will have to do less of as you do more fleets. You know, before I took my first fleet out, I probably set my fleet up over an hour early, and I was so meticulous in everything I set up. Now I have all these saved templates, and I do like 5 minutes of prep for a fleet. But the first time you do it, you're going to want to do some prep. What we're looking at for today, or for this section here, we're going to look at goals, choosing a doctrine, MOTD, and the Discord event. So we're getting a bit more hands-on now. You're taking your fleet out. What do you want to do? First and foremost, you should kind of figure out what's the goal of your fleet. Most of my fleets are roams for fun. Like I just say, hey, so let's form up a fleet. We're going to filament off the nullsec, and we're going to find some enemies to shoot. That's my goal. Maybe you want to do that. Maybe you want to do something else. Maybe you want to take one out to rob some banks. Maybe you want to do an ESS robbing fleet. Those are a good time. Or you want to rob some skyhooks, make some money. Also a good time. Maybe you want to do a gate camp. Gate camps are such a good chill thing, right? You go, you find a gate, and you just sit there with everyone for a couple hours, and you just hang out and chat. And then we have StratOps, the big one. So if you're doing a StratOp, that's obviously the goal in itself. Destroy the structure or save the structure. Yes, and drink. Yes, gate camps are a good choice for a drunk fleet too. Setting up your fleet. There's a few things you can set up. Your MOTD is really important. You'll see some FCs are very lazy with their MOTD and they won't have any info in there. I really don't recommend that. Like, it works, but the more information you put in the MOTD, the less likely you're going to be to have questions. People will always ask you questions about stuff, and it's so much easier if you can just check the MOTD. Put things like, where are we forming up? What's the doctrine? What should people name their ships? Who should be on watch list? You put that kind of information in the MOTD, and people can just go back there and consult it on their own. You want to set up the composition of the fleet. So if anyone hasn't done a fleet stuff before, if you look, you can actually have kind of subgroups within a fleet. So you can have wings, and in those wings you can have squads. So you want to make sure that you have a good setup for what you need. So depending on what you're doing, maybe you just need one squad for all of your battle ventures. If you're doing a more complicated Ferox farm up, you might want multiple squads so that you can have Logi in one, Ewar in another. If people are bringing alts, you might want to have different squads so that they can take the squad lead position to invite their own alts. Need all these kind of things. As a whole, though, this can all be copied from the game. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel here. What you can do is just ask someone who has FC'd before, like, hey, do you have a fleet set up that I can copy? I've got a screenshot here for what that looks like. I should have added some red circles. Yeah, as you can see, this is one that I have saved. I think this is my Stratop one, I believe. I have a bunch of stored fleet setups. But yeah, so my MOTD is saved. It's got a destination. It's got where comms are. It's got a time. You don't need the time. You don't need the target. I just have those in there from that. I've got a link to how to set up a whisper key on Mumble, because if you do a Stratop, the number one thing you're going to be doing for the first 10 minutes is asking people to set up whisper keys. That is a big part of Mumble life. Yeah, Ordman 2 was a great station. That was our one R64 moon. I made so much ISK mining that moon. I miss it. But yeah, if you're doing handouts like a Stratop, I like to put people's names in there, so I would have whoever's handing out those ships after it. Fleet roles, so people can add. Yeah, that's just what I put in mine. If you see in the middle here, I was talking about these setups with squads and wings. So in this fleet, I have 2 wings. I have one wing called main fleet and one called utility. And then I have the different squads underneath there. So it's tiered. As I said, you do not have to go and manually recreate all this. Ask somebody, ask anyone you know, or join a fleet. And when you're in a fleet, if you just click these 3 dots in the top right corner, you'll see this button, Store Fleet Setup. If you click on that, it'll pop up, ask you what you want to name it, and you can save it. And then you can just press one button and it'll automatically recreate all of this for you. So I have like 10 different fleet setups saved. Like I have a Yeet fleet one for anytime we're filamenting. I have this Stratop one. I have like a travel fleet one. I have a battle venture one because that was so different. But yeah, use that store fleet setup button, copy other people's fleets. Don't reinvent the wheel. Yeah, have the info in there. Tilly and I will get to that. Just give me a moment. Creating an event in Discord. 2. Discord is much easier. Last year we were using the forums. That took some work. Now we're doing Discord events. I will tell you right now, this guide is pinned in the Educators Corner channel here in Discord as well. But realistically, creating an event is super straightforward. Couple little things I want to point out for it though. When you create an event in Discord, the voice channel that you select will be how visible the fleet event is to people. So what I mean by that, if you're looking at this step 3 right here on creating an event, you see I have it set to Fleet Alpha. This means that only people that can see Fleet Alpha will see my event. So Fleet Alpha is visible to anyone that's in Corp, but no one out of Corp will see this event. So if you have friends who don't have a unique character, but they're here as a guest in our Discord server, they won't see this event. If you want to do something more selective, for example, maybe you're in Wormhole Campus and you want to do something with just Wormhole Campus people, you could set the voice channel to be Wormhole Campus, and then anybody who's not Wormhole Campus won't see the event. So just keep in mind when you create an event of the visibility. This is more of a classroom thing. I've had problems with teachers creating events in the wrong channels. For fleets, it's not as bad. But yeah, generally pick Fleet Alpha. All the people will see it. If you are doing an NPSI fleet, so if you're going to invite people outside of uni, you could do Fleet Public. If you do Fleet Public, then anyone that's in this Discord server will see that event. Other than that, yeah, I think this is all pretty straightforward. You can create an event right now if you want. We can make Amphion go through and delete a bunch of events. If anyone wants to create a test event, we'll give Amphion that work. But yeah, you just click create event, you pick it. Keynote 2, the time is your local time. Remember, we talk Eve time most of the time, but for Discord, it is your local time. So pick the time, and that matches yours. Give a bit of info. For PvP fleets, I usually like to put the location. So even in the title of this example, you can see I put AAFs from JITA. So right in the title, people know G to form up AAF doctrine. That's all you need. Once you've got the event made, if you click the share button, you get a link you can copy and share with people. Yeah, Discord events might seem intimidating, but they're super easy to set up. Just key things are remember that time is local to your computer and that the channel will affect who can see the event. Oh, Tilly and I lied to you. There is a section about FATs, but it's not in this section. It might be the next one. Yeah, I think it's in the next one. We'll talk about the FATs in a minute. So if anyone has questions what a FAT means, you'll see in a minute. Okay, so we've gone through the prep. You've planned your fleet. You have created a Discord event for your fleet. You have set up the fleet MOTD in advance. You are ready. You have your goal picked. You know what you're going to do, all that. It's time. The fleet's going to start. What do you got to do? First, you want to talk about snowflakes. You want to look at finding some scouts. We'll talk about logi ratios. We'll talk a little bit about capping the fleet or not. We'll talk about what you should fly as FC. Here we'll talk about the FAT link. And then we will go through undock checks. So snowflakes. Snowflakes are the special ships, right? These are the ones that are going to get us more content. These are the ones that are going to fly something a little different. Depends on what your doctrine is, depends on what kind of snowflakes you bring. I will say, regardless of what doctrine you're doing, bubblers as a whole are good to bring on any fleet, unless you're going to low sec, I guess. If you're going to null or wormhole space, bring a bubbler. It is so frustrating to be on a fleet and see enemies escape because we don't have a bubble to trap them there. So try and bring a bubbler if you can. Always good to ask. Interdictors or bubblers will get advanced SRP on any fleet regardless of doctrine. So even if you are flying Merlins, which are shield, and you bring an armor interdictor along, it will still get advanced SRP. Same thing for tackle ships. Links. You'll hear people talk about links a lot. Links are the short form for command bursts. These are a great force multiplier. They make a huge difference. In something like Merlin's, a link ship is probably not super worth it because one link ship costs the same as like 20 Merlins. But if you're doing AAFs, it's good to bring along a Magus or a Ponti. When you do links, the first couple times you're asked as an FC, what link should I bring? It's a big, oh no, what do I do moment. I remember when I first started FCing and people would ask me what links I wanted, I would always just say, use your own judgment. That's something that obviously, yeah, you can do that. Most links pilots know what they should fly, but as a whole, the way I do it is I just quickly pull up the Wikipedia page again. If you pull up the Wiki page, there's this chart on it. And basically, you want to find the links for the tank that you're flying. And if you're flying something brawly, you want some skirmish generally. So you see I have a note here, skirm and tank, shield or armor, if only one. If you're flying kitey, info is good too. So what I do, if I am flying AAFs and I have a link ship, or I have two link ships even, and they say, oh, what should we fly? I go, okay, we're flying AAFs, that's armor. So I go and I look at the armor and I'm like, okay, I know the HP bonus is usually the primary one that we want. The resist one is nice to have too. So I might ask my armor one to fly reinforcement and energizing. The repair ones are good if you have a lot of logi. They're not as prioritized generally. If you don't have a lot of logi, focus on the other two. For skirmish, depending on what you're flying, again, rapid deployment is huge. If you're in small, fast-moving ships, rapid deployment is so good to have. Your tackle will love interdiction as well. But yeah, generally you want a bit of tank and you want rapid deployment if you can get it for links. But if you're ever stuck, just pull up the page on the wiki, go to the chart, and find the tank. E-War. We talked about E-War already there with the flight deck stuff a minute ago. But yeah, E-War is a huge force multiplier. It helps so much. So try to bring some E-War along on your fleets. I personally always try to get crucifiers first and foremost. I think the tracking disrupt and missile disrupt adds the most bang for your buck. If you are flying missile ships like SBC, then you'll definitely want a Vigil because the target painters help missile ships a lot. Griffins are really good if people know what they're doing, but Griffins are definitely going to be the first thing to be shot otherwise, so I try not to bring them along too much. I might bring a Blackbird though, that's the step up. And Mollis are good. Mollis fly damps. Damps are good, but the thing is, with so many of our brawling doctrines, damps are not going to help as much. You can do sensor damps, and sensor damps will stop or significantly slow down a marauder from locking a frigate. So sensor damps will help there. But as a whole, if we're brawling, I don't find as much value in damps as I find in tracking disrupts. I find that more. Both will help. Both are better than none, for sure. But I just get a lot more utility out of the disrupts than I do out of the damps. If you're flying in non-brawling ships, if you're doing something like Fairhawks, then yeah, range damps could be good. You might be able to damp your enemies down to less range than you have. Any E-War is good. End of the day, any E-War will help you out. E-War is a good thing. I prefer the disrupts myself. Yeah, you could try and bring something like a carries for a long point. We don't have that. Do we have a uni carries fit? We might. I'm not sure. Flight deck ones are covered as one of our doctrines, so that's why I have them mentioned here. But yeah, you could bring other types of viewer. Okay, KSG carries, yes. Yeah, yeah, KSG carries would be a great one to bring along. I think, now that you say that, I might have seen something before about it can still get advanced SRP in other doctrines, but I don't recall. But yeah. Yeah, as a whole, I like the disrupts, but any E-War is good E-War. Bring E-War along if you can. Scouts. Scouting, super important. If we don't have scouts, we don't have a fleet, right? So this is sometimes this is the most stressful part of a fleet is just getting scouts at form up. It's just you need good scouts. If you don't have good scouts, you're going to have a lot of trouble and not find content. I will say, as a new FC, it helps you so much if you have experienced scouts with you. There's nothing wrong with taking new scouts along, but if you are a new FC and you have new scouts together, you're probably going to have some difficulties. When I teach scouting, I talk a lot about the relationship between FC and scouts and how to complement each other. Complement as in work well together, not just saying, hey, great job. But as a whole, you need to be in sync with your scouts and your FC. So maybe if your FC can't figure out which way to go, the scouts need to decide. Or if your scouts don't know where they should go, your FC needs to decide. So it makes your life a lot easier as a new FC if you can have some good scouts. This is something you can ask for in advance. You can reach out to people you've seen scouting and say, hey, I'm going to do a fleet on Tuesday. Can you please come and scout for me? And that'll just be a big weight off your shoulders. My first couple fleets I went out on, I had some really great scouts. I had Clarities and Shukin and Bazinga Among Us and all these great scouts scouting for me, and it made my life so much easier. Scouts need to have a mic. Don't let someone with a mic scout for you. Maybe they could be like third scout, but you want at least 1 or 2 scouts that have mics so they can tell you things. If you have someone offer to scout that you do not know, if you don't recognize their name, double check that they know what they're signing up for. I was on a fleet a few months ago with a newer FC, and when he asked for scouts, there were 3 people next up, and one of them was a name I didn't even recognize. And when I checked, they were a new bro who had never done any PvP before. It was their very first PvP fleet, and they just put an X. They had no idea what they had signed up for. You don't want that situation, so take a look. Just ask your scout, hey, have you scouted before? It's good to establish that, and it's a good time to see if they have a mic and they can answer you. Yeah. Generally, for scouting, interceptors are best. You want people in a malediction, a crow, a stiletto, whatever. You can have your bubbler scout. People can scout in a bubbler, but generally bubblers will die quicker and not be able to hold a target as well as a interceptor. If your scouts do not have those abilities, a condor can work, but they die pretty quick too. So ideally, you want a couple interceptors. Work with what you have, though. Just like I said, keep in mind, no scouts is no fleet. So it's better to have a couple condors than nothing. But yeah, you need some scouts. There's a couple questions in chat. Let's see. Oh, going back to the E-War, why do Griffins have probes on board? Yeah, I'm not sure on that one. It might be for escaping Potrin. It might be for scanning enemies. I don't know on that one. And yes, targeting range damps can be useful if you're fighting at range. Yeah, if you're brawling, then If you're brawling and you're fighting a ship that has a longer range and you do a target range damp, it's not going to affect it much because you're already brawling it. But it's useful if you are doing, if you're not brawling. So, yeah, form up. We start by asking for snowflakes. We ask for scouts. We get those handled. You want to talk logi then. The logi can be iffy. It depends a lot. You have to stay flexible. It's hard to have a hard and fast rule. If you look at the doctrine page in Alliance Auth, you will see some recommendations. I've got my own here as well. Generally, I aim for 20 to 30% logi ratios in fleets. I try to have somewhere around that amount of the fleet members be logi, but there's some things to keep in mind. Uh, First and foremost is just your ability to kill things. If you're doing a small group, if there's like 10 of you going out of Merlins, if you have 3 bursts and 1 or 2 scouts, you're only going to have like 5 Merlins, and you're not going to be able to break an Ishtar even with that. So if you're going with a small group, you might just say, okay, we're doing no logi. We'll just go out and we'll just be all DPS. That works for Merlins because they're shield tanked. If you're flying AAFs, that doesn't work as well because you don't have any way to top up your armor between fights. So it's a little trickier there. But if you're in Merlin's small group, you can get away with no logi. Keep in mind your ships as well. So there, you hit a point where you get diminishing returns with logi because they just can't keep people alive. A Merlin can be killed in 1 or 2 shots from some enemy fleets, right? Because they have just low EHP. So if you have 20 bursts trying to keep one ship alive, but it gets killed in a single shot, it's still going to die. So you hit a point where it's silly to have more bursts and you're just going to get alphaed through. So if you are taking out Merlins and you get like a 50-person Merlin fleet, don't take 20% burst. So don't go out with that many bursts. You'll have too many. Cap it. Have 5 or 6 max. There maybe. If you're flying a Ferox fleet, though, Feroxes can tank a lot. Nothing is going to alpha one. Maybe like a Titan Doomsday, I guess, but we're not going to worry about that. But yeah, as a whole, Feroxes can take a lot of damage, so you can bring a lot of Bazzies along to keep your Feroxes alive. Okay, Doomsday can't hit subcaps. I did not know that. Look at that, learning every day. But yes, don't stress too much about bringing a lot of logi when you're flying small ships. The bursts keep Merlins alive well if we're fighting a small fleet, but if we're just getting alphaed, again, alpha means to be one shot, so no way of saving them with infinite heals. If we're just getting alpha, logi's worthless there. So yeah, don't stress high amounts of logi in small ships, but bigger ships you want more. Fleet size. This is a decision you have to make as an FC early on, and this is one that is 100% your choice. So if you're doing a filament fleet, keep in mind filaments cap at 25 people. If you have 26 people in fleet, you cannot take a filament, or well, one of you is not coming along. So I personally, when I take out fleets, I like filaments. They're easy. You just take a filament, you end up somewhere in nullsec, you find content there. If you end up with 26 people, you've got to find a different way to get to nullsec. You can burn over and go just gate into nullsec, hope you find something, or you can go through Thera, have problems there. It's up to you. What you can do, if you want to ensure that you can use filaments, is you can hard cap your fleet at 25 people. This is a setting when you hit create fleet, there's a max number. You can check a box and make it so only 25 people can be in your fleet. Again, this is your personal choice. If you are dead set, you only want a filament, you don't want to mess around with Thera or gating, limit your fleet to 25. When other people try to join, just say, sorry, we're full, maybe next time. If you don't mind doing that, you can leave your fleet uncapped. You can have 30 people, 50 people, whatever have you, and you can just go and gate your way around. Both are options. It's up to you at that point. Personally, I normally leave my fleets uncapped just because I try to make my fleets accessible to everyone, but I will admit it does get frustrating when you have 30 people and your closest Thera is like 12 jumps away. Yeah, you could do drifter wormhole stuff. Yeah, drifter wormholes are an option. You might have some issues with the rats and landing 80 kilometers off, but with the events on right now, maybe it's easier using drifter wormholes. I haven't played much in the last couple months. FC ships, yeah. So there's two schools of thought here when you're FCing. As an FC, you want to stay alive the longest. The risk of being headshot and dying first is very real. Uh, if you die and someone else has to take over, well, then that's no fun for you. That hurts the fleet. It's not a good thing. You can do it a few ways. You can just blend in with the pack. You can fly a DPS ship like everyone else. If everyone's in a Merlin and you're in a Merlin too, then hey, that's good. You'll blend in. You can try and fly something tankier, for example, too. I don't always like this because that can make you stand out. If you're in the one ship that's different than everyone else, you might be called primary by an enemy just because you're different. So sometimes there's some benefits blending in with the pack. When I FC Merlins, I actually change my Merlin fit and I put more tank on it. Like I switch out some of the, I think I offline one of the guns and I change the rigs to be more tank focused so that I'm still in a Merlin and I blend in, but I can survive a few more shots. Yeah, and the screenshot here is the time that I did not blend in with the pack. I decided I would fly a Monitor, which is a great FC ship. It's super tanky, but the enemies knew that I was the FC, so they tackled me. Well, the rest of the Feroxes all warped away. They thought they would force the fight. They figured that if I was tackled, I would stay there and fight when we were trying not to fight. But no, I just said, okay, 2ICU take over. I will stay here and die. But if I was not in a Monitor here, if I was just in the Ferox like everyone else, I probably would not have been tackled and died. I was tackled because I was specifically the FC and they knew they could try to force the fight. Uh, Nerox, yeah, I said at the start of this one that, yeah, I was assuming people had some basic PvP knowledge here coming in. So I'm sorry that you're lost with this. Yeah, I would recommend attending an Intro to Fleets class before this for sure. But feel free to stick around and keep listening. Just, yeah, I'm sorry if some of this is over your head. This was not the time I asked people to pod me with an expensive head. No, Tomlin has never lost an expensive pod, Raven. That was my Dictorol that lost my training clones, not this one. Da, da, da. And yeah. So when you're choosing your ship, fly a DPS ship. Do not FC from a Logi ship. Do not FC from a scouting ship. But yeah, decide if you want to fly something to blend in or be a bit tankier. We had one US time zone FC who used to take out Merlins, and he would FC from a Hecate. So he was in a Hecate that was much tankier than the Merlins. But he would also frequently be shot first because the enemies would much rather kill a Hecate than a Merlin. Fat links. Okay, so this is something that Tilly was asking about earlier. Is Iron in here? Iron is not here. Okay, Iron actually has told me that these are not as important and he doesn't look at them anymore. But basically, a fat link is a fleet activity tracker. That's what FAT stands for, fleet activity tracker. These are a way of just keeping track of who went on what fleets. These are used in some of the big null blocks for participation points where people have to attend a certain amount of fleets per month or they get credit for attending things. Here in uni, they're not as important. Iron Ludwig was using them for a while to track FC activity. So he would use these to see which FCs were taking out more fleets and things like that. Basically, it's just a way of tracking who was going there. It's not much work to set up. You go into auth. I think you just have to have the junior FC role and you will see this in auth. You press the add fat link button, you give your fleet a name, and then you hit add ESI link and it will automatically link to your character and it will pull all the info. It's not super important. It's a little bit of paperwork and it's some tracking stuff. If you don't do it, it's fine. But if you do it, it just can help with having some better record keeping. Yeah. Yeah, there are two boxes. There is a clickable or an ESI one. I know WHC uses the clickable one. For the ESI one, it just adds everybody that's in your fleet at the time. So if you're doing a roaming fleet, you can add everyone from your fleet fine there. Yeah, it's, again, don't stress it. But if you're someone who likes to do everything by the book and you want to make sure you're checking all your boxes, setting up a fat link, it's useful. But if you don't care about space paperwork, and I do think Iron Ludwig has stopped even looking at these too much, you don't have to worry about it. Let's see what is going on in the chat here. Yeah, if the fleet is anchoring on an FC, it'll still be obvious that you're the FC, even if you're blending them into the pack. So yeah, Generally, it's pretty easy for enemy fleets to spot an FC just by who the anchor is. Oh, Kodo. Oh, Kodo. Okay. Yeah, a lot of points about Fatlink's benefits for other things too, for keeping track of. So yeah, if you're just taking Merlins out, it's not as big of a deal, but there are some benefits to it. Again, no one is going to be upset with you if you don't do a Fatlink, but they're useful for tracking things. Uh, Last thing in this form up section is just the undock check. Personally, I like putting my undock checks in my MOTD. So my MOTD usually has an undock checklist in here, and I advise that you should always do undock checks with your fleet, even if everyone there is experienced, because everyone, even you yourself, will make mistakes here. So just very quick, last thing you do before you take a fleet out, just double check. You're in a clean clone. As you're doing it, I just verbalize this. What I do is I look at my fleet MOTD and then I do the checks myself and I just verbally talk about it to have everyone else do it. So I click on my face and I check I'm in a clean clone. And as I'm doing that, I'm in comms. I'm saying, hey, everybody, check you're in a clean clone. I click the repair button on my ship. I tell everybody, repair your ship. I check my inventory for ammo. I tell everybody, check for ammo. It takes 30 seconds to do undock checks, but you can save a lot of trouble if you do it. Yes, try not to lose your fancy pods in the Merlin fleet. Okay, that's form up there. How are we doing? Oh, we're only an hour and 20 minutes in. Look at this. I think we're making good time. Okay, finding content. This has some overlap with the scouting class. Scouting as a whole, your scouts are the ones who are going to be finding content, but you should be helping facilitate them and guiding them towards the content. So it's that working in partnership. What we're going to talk about in this section, .lan, evi, zkill, in-game map, and then some existing knowledge. It's kind of a short section. Personally, I use .lan myself when I am going out leading a fleet. The reason I use .lan is simply because it is the first one that I used, and I am a creature of habit. The other option is evi, which is on the next slide, but I learned on .lan, and I just keep using .lan because of that. If you are not using any right now, I'd recommend you start with evi. Oh yes, Wolf, I love every time we talk about it, you always mention Rift, and I've looked up Rift, and Rift looks super powerful. I just have not learned that either yet. I am just a stubborn old man with my .lan love. But yes, I do want to try Rift. Um, Basically, these are all these software I'm talking about. If you're not familiar, .lan, evi, Rift, these are all Intel tools. These are all third-party websites that we can use to try to find where enemies are. So firstly, I use .lan. I use the NPC kills delta layer, and I use that to try to look for where people are ratting. Delta shows you the difference in NPC kills in the last 2 hours compared to the 2 hours before that. So when you look at delta, you're seeing, is there people that are doing more there now or in the last 2 hours than there were 3 or 4 hours ago? It's not always up to date. It can be over an hour out of date at times. The website does die randomly, sometimes right when you're in the middle of a fleet. It's not great for these things, but it's a simple 2D map. Basically, I just look at it and I look for areas where there's some green, and I tell my scouts to go look at the green areas, and I lead the fleet in that direction. There are some things you can do. There is some browser add-on you can get so that every time you jump a gate, .lan will refresh and show you that on .lan, so you can see exactly where you are. I don't bother with that, honestly, but it's something you can do. In a similar vein, evi exists, and evi is a similar setup. Evi does have a bit more advanced UI. There's a lot more buttons you can press. You can have multiple filters so that you can see more than just ratting. So you could look at number of jumps through a system at the same time as you're looking at that. So you can pull multiple info sources together and use that. I haven't seen many people use it, but I know Zolpidem's used to use it. There's an overlay even for evi that you can project over your Eve client. So you can see a full map while you're out just playing Eve as is. These are all, again, these are maps. These are tools to try and find where stuff's happening. Yeah, there's this talk of Rift and SMT, so there's lots of other options around. You can also use zkill. I think most people are familiar with Zkill, but if you're not, Zkill is where all the kills get posted to online. It's a third-party tool, but everyone uses it. So you can go on Zkill and you can check a region. So if you are in Delve right now and you're wandering Delve and you're having trouble finding where stuff's happening, if you just go on Zkill and you search Delve, it will show you where all the kills are recently. So you can say, hey, look, there's a bunch of people dying in this system that's 10 jumps away. Let's go to that system. So Zkill's a good way to find where fights are and where enemy fleets are. It also gives you that intel of what your enemies are flying too. So you can say, oh, hey, there's a big fleet of enemy harpies over there. We can go fight. Or, oh, I don't want to mess with that because of that. Yeah, so Zkill, useful. I will say, quite honestly, lots of times when I am FCing, I am overwhelmed enough with just following Eve and following a map and leading scouts around that I don't look at Zkill. If I have time, if there's a quiet moment, if we're really struggling for content, I will pull it up. But honestly, as FC, you're usually pretty busy and stretched out. There's the in-game map as well. The in-game map is one of those things where, as a new player, you look at it and you're like, oh, this is neat. And then you start using third-party maps and you say, why would I ever use the in-game map? And then you get to high-end stuff and you're like, oh, the in-game map actually has some really useful info. Um, Surprisingly, a lot of like the Tuskers guys use the in-game map when they're out hunting for content. There's filters you can use with the in-game map, such as number of pilots in space or number of jumps through a system. So this is a good way of doing it. So lots of times, if I'm hunting, whether I'm scouting or FCing, I will go on Dotland, I will look for that green delta for NPC kills, and then I will pull up the in-game map, and I will look to see what it says for pilots in space. So if I see a green delta, and then I see that it says there's 3 pilots in space, I think, oh, hey, that's pretty good. There's probably someone there I can go get. Yes, important note in chat, pilots in space, it's an average of the last 30 minutes. So you might see a number there and you get there and there's nobody there. It's not quite up to date. But sometimes Dotland's information is an hour and a half out of date. So average of the last 30 minutes can be a lot more useful. Number of jumps can also tell you if somewhere is a high traffic system. So if you're looking to set up a gate camp, maybe you want to find some spot that there's a lot of movement through. Yeah, so the in-game map can be another useful tool there. The big one that I rely on a lot personally is existing knowledge as well. The more you PvP, the more you wander nullsec, the more you'll start to recognize different areas. Whether it's the staging systems, where you'll find 200 people in local, or whether it's common ratting areas or pipes or pockets. I always talk about the Dracaris pocket on my fleets that go through Quirius or through Delve, because there's a little pocket down in southeast Quirius that there's always people from Dracaris ratting in, and they will always come fight us, generally. So I always go there. There's a spot just outside of what region is it? There's one in Scalding Pass, I think, where people do they do a lot of marauder ratting that I like to check out every time I go through. These are just areas that I have been to a few times and I find content in, so I know they're good spots to go to look for content. This is something that just comes in time. Yes, this is being recorded. Yes, I have all this. I don't know when I'll get it up, but sometime in the next few days. So yeah, when you're looking for content as a whole, a lot of ways to do it, but whether it's Dotland, Evi, Rift, SMT, Zkill, just where you've been, it just takes some experience and some figuring out where you should go looking for things. It's good to keep an eye on pipes and pockets as a whole too when you're traveling. You don't want to take your fleet down to a dead end pocket unless you have a really good feeling there's something down there. If you're going down one of those long dead end pipes like there are in some regions, you want to send a scout ahead of you to make sure there's something worth going down. You don't want to make your fleet go 5 jumps one way and then 5 jumps back for nothing. So keep an eye. And that's the finding content one. Are we at the big one now? Oh no, we have one more before the big one. Number 7, target calling is the big one, like I said, so we're almost there. Common issues. So this section is just going to talk about some problems that you might run into on a fleet, some things that happen a lot. Don't worry about it. Some of the common issues you will run into are problems with aggression timers, warping yourself, as I talked about earlier, issues with Thera, people that are lost, scouts dying, morale problems, and when to fight. First and foremost, big part of learning PvP and a big part of FCing is keeping in mind how much fighting on gates sucks and how much the weapon timer affects things, right? My big advice is you need to be strict with your fleets that they should not be shooting people unless you tell them to. Remember, as soon as you activate a weapon or a module on an enemy or links on a friendly, you get that 60-second weapon timer and you cannot jump through a gate. So you need to be aware of this. Maybe you're sitting on a gate and an enemy ship lands with you. If you tell your whole fleet to shoot that enemy and that enemy does not shoot back, they're just going to jump the gate and run away from you. So you've got to really manage that aggro. You need to wait until the enemy shoots you first, or you need to be able to trap them there. Bubbles are a great way to do this. If you have a bubbler, you can just have the other side of the gate bubbled. So you can start shooting someone. If they jump through the gate, they're stuck in a bubble on the other side, and some of your fleet can catch them. What you'll see some of the more experienced FCs will do, they'll even split their fleet DPS into two. If you go on like Kiakti's fleets, the shrink wrapped from Fun Inc. ones, he will have DPS 1 and DPS 2. And he will say things like, okay, DPS 1, you fight on this side. DPS 2, go through the gate, fight on the other side. So this way you have fleet on both sides. Just try to control your fleet. Make sure that people are not shooting when they're not supposed to. Don't have people aggress on a gate unless the enemy is aggressed or unless you have tackle waiting on the other side of the gate. If you have multiple scouts, make one of your scouts sit on the other side of the gate and wait. They're okay. Your scouts are fine if they miss out on getting on the kill for something. You just want to make sure if you're doing things on the gate, you have something on the other side of the gate that can catch them. Bubbles are good because a bubbler can bubble one side of a gate, then jump through a gate and bubble the other side. So bubbles can be good there. The other timer to be aware of is the 15-minute timer. You cannot use a filament if you have that 15-minute timer. So if you're out on a filament fleet and you are not having luck finding anything and you want to filament again, keep an eye on that timer. Sometimes you'll see like one Vexer or one Little Explorer or one Merlin wandering around. If you want to filament, do not go and get yourself a fresh timer for something dumb like that. Just let it go. Just keep in mind your timers there. Don't get fresh timers if you don't need to. Warping yourself. Every FC in the history of FCs has done this. I have done it multiple times. Some of you listening have probably already done this. If you haven't, you will. At some point, you will say, fleet, take this warp, and you will warp yourself. It happens. Don't worry about it. Common thing. It's like on a bingo card. Everyone checks it off. It's just a normal thing. The good ways to deal with this is you have your 2IC sitting in the wing command spot. So then if you just warp yourself, your 2IC can just hit warp. And they can just have everyone warp, and they'll just land a second or two after you. If you don't have the main wing command spot, you can tell people to warp themselves too. Hopefully they're not in a dangerous spot, and they'll just catch up. Yeah. This is a common issue. Just don't feel bad when it happens. Like I said, the whole reason I became a lead FC was because I was 2IC in this position, but we didn't warp off. We stayed and fought. Thera. So I made this slide just because of Laura. So if anyone went on some of Laura's Merlin fleets a month or two back, she had a very big problem with rolling Thera holes by accident. So Thera is a great spot to go through, but there's a couple things to keep in mind. One is that it's a wormhole and it can only take a certain amount of mass through it. So once enough ships go through it, it will close. If you are in a frigate fleet, you're small, you're probably not going to roll it, but you might, as has happened to Laura. If you're in a bigger fleet, if you're taking battle cruisers or something, you have to be very aware of wormhole mass. So check the mass. You can right click on it, show info, read some of that. Other thing to keep in mind is that Thera frequently has camps in it. If there is a Thera hole that's within 5 jumps of Jita, there probably will be people camping it. That's not a bad thing though. That's a bad thing if you're solo. So if you're trying to go somewhere on your own, that's a bad thing. But if there's like 5 to 10 ships camping a Thera in hole and you bring your whole fleet, hey, that's a good chance to warm up the fleet with a fight there. Fighting on a Thera wormhole is tricky because people can just take the wormhole and end up back in high sec, but it is a good chance to get a little warm-up fight at least. If you are leading a uni fleet and going through Thera, I recommend you have a scout or experienced person be the last person to go through, just so they can make sure everyone gets through. We have lost people getting into and out of Thera multiple times just because they don't know how to take a wormhole, or when they're in Thera, they run out of cap warping between spots and they don't realize it. So yeah, it's Thera is wonderful. You just need to be a little bit cautious with it there. People do get lost too. As I said, with Thera it happens, and sometimes it just happens with people getting turned around or ending up in spots they shouldn't be, missing a call or jumping a wrong gate. This is a spot where you need to make some judgment calls, but you need to be realistic about it. If you can save someone that is lost, that's great. Try to save the person. You want everyone to have a good time on your fleet. You want them to come with you and have a good time. If they're off in some random null-sec spot on their own, they're probably not going to have as much fun. However, you also need to keep in mind how many people you have in your fleet. If you've got 20 people in your fleet and there's one person that's off, lost, and they're slowing everything down and they're just going to make you take a half hour to try and save them and come back, that's a half hour of 20 different people's time, and that is not respectful to them. So keep in mind, basically, you're the boss. As FC, you're in charge. You make all the decisions, but it's not just about you. It's about every single fleet member you have. Sometimes you want to be the hero. You want to go and save this guy. That's great. But is it respectful of everyone's time? Maybe, maybe not. So be realistic. Be callous if you have to, or be kind. It's your choice. This is just something you have to think about and be aware of as you go. There are times in the fleet where you just have to tell people, sorry. I'm sorry you died, or I'm sorry you got lost there. I'll see you on the next fleet. There are times you might have to say that. We try not to, you know. I'm Canadian, right? I try to be overly passively nice about everything. You know, we try not to offend and do everything we can. But there are times when that comes up, and I just have to tell people, hey, I hope you can catch up because we're not coming back. Yeah. If you are worried about things like this, you can just not take brand new bros along on your fleets with you too. Like I said, I make my fleets accessible. I say everyone's welcome generally, but you will see some FCs say requirement that you have attended at least 3 fleets or 5 fleets before you come. That's perfectly fine. You're allowed to do that. If you don't want to deal with brand new people to PvP, don't take brand new people to PvP. No one's going to be upset. Just make it clear from the get-go that that's what you expect. Yeah. You can also send somebody to go save them too. So if you have one person that's really lost, give them a buddy. Ask some experienced person in fleet to go back and save them or to guide them along in the private chat. You know, just again, keep in mind it's not just your time that is potentially being wasted, it's everyone's time in your fleet. So respect everyone's time. Same thing, if you're forming up and you're just about to filament and someone joins fleet and says, hey, I'm 10 jumps away, can I still come? Say no. Please say no then. Don't make your whole fleet wait while someone comes 10 jumps to catch up because they were late. Another common issue, scouts dying. Yeah, this happens a lot. Scouts die a lot. It happens. Hopefully the scouts are able to make do, you know. Uh, I try and teach new scouts that they should have reships and all NPC stations around that they can find or make it back through Thera. So I've done this before where I'm scouting, I die, and I quickly rejoin the fleet because I had a ship 5 jumps away or I had a ship in Thera so I could come back. Hopefully your scouts can do that, or hopefully there's a second scout that can take over when your first one dies. If you have no scouts left, you can always ask a DPS that has tackle to try to step up. Again, they need a micro and stuff. If you have no scouts left and you don't have any DPS you can have be your tackle at that point, you've got to come up with a solution here. There have been times where this has happened to me and I just whelped the fleet. I just said, okay, I know there's a gate camp in the next system. We're just going to go and we're going to throw ourselves at that gate camp because there's nothing else we can do. You don't have to be that disastrous about it, you could set up a camp of your own, right? You could say, okay, we lost our scout, but we're all just going to hang out on this gate and we'll catch whatever comes through. Or you can just say, we're going to head home. Okay, guys, we don't have a scout. We're going to film it through Potchford now, or we're going to go through Thera to get home. Or yeah, you can whelp the fleet, pull a Tomlin. Another thing to keep in mind is morale and momentum of a fleet. Fleets are fun, they're exciting, and they have highs and low moments always, right? You got to keep in mind how your fleet is doing. You know, if your fleet is jovial, if everyone's having a good time, if you're chatting, there's lots of great banter, everyone's doing well early on, and then in the second hour it seems like you're the only one talking and there's long stretches of quietness on comms, that might be telling you that people are getting tired. People are over it. They want to end the fleet. It might be time to wrap up. It could be something else too, honestly. It's not necessarily that. It might just be people are busy, but try to keep your finger on the pulse of the fleet. So get a feel for how people are doing. If everyone seems tired, if everyone seems slow and demoralized, call the fleet. You can stop a fleet after an hour. You don't have to keep going for 2 hours or 3 hours. 1 hour fleet is long enough. You can find fun stuff to do in an hour. Keep in mind, if you are continually running away from fights or not taking things, or people are slowly dying and you're not seeming to accomplish much, that's going to hurt morale. Your fleet is going to be in a low mood. So you got to try and avoid doing that stuff if you can. There's been times, a couple times at least, where I was being chased by a bigger fleet and we were running from them and getting away, but we kept losing people slowly. One person would get caught out here, another person a few jumps later. We weren't ever seeming to escape this fleet. We were running for like 20 minutes and we just kept trickling people away, and it sucked. Nobody was having a good time there. So we just took the fight and we all died, which that's the way I do things. Maybe that's not the right way to do things. Better way might have been to film it out, but try to keep an eye on what morale is going like in your fleet. And yeah, that last point, you are partly an entertainer for the fleets. You don't have to be. I'm not trying to say like everyone here has to be like super gregarious, outgoing, like life of the party type or anything like that. You can be an FC and be an emotionless robot. That is perfectly fine. You do not need to be some kind of clown or party animal to keep your fleets going. Just keep in mind, you need to keep people engaged as you're going. I mentioned earlier when we were talking GDO about the one structure bash I did where it took us 1 hour. As in, we spent 61 minutes just orbiting a structure and shooting it with nothing else going on. So for that 61 minutes, yeah, I was telling people stories, I was explaining how the mechanics worked, and at one point I ran out of stuff to do, so I just started raffling off skins that I had. I just went streamer mode and I pulled up the wheel of names and I started giving people out skins. Yeah. Yeah, you do not have to, you don't have to be an entertainer, but try to do what you can to keep the momentum up and keep people happy. The 300 Kodo, I might still have those. I'm not sure. I can check my assets later. I have a lot of skins for sure from doing that and giving them out. But yeah, key point of this whole slide is just you've got a fleet of people with you. Keep an eye on how they're doing. You know, you can even just ask people. One common one I've seen is FCs just say, "Hey, how many minutes left do you have in you? Give me a number in fleet chat." And you'll see some people put 5 and some will put infinite or some will put 20, and you can kind of gauge that to see if people want to stand down. And the last point here is knowing when to fight. I called this one seal clubbing, I think, in the initial part there. So yeah, it's fun to go out and kill Ishtars and miners. Sure. You take your fleet of Merlins out, you find an Ishtar, or you find a Porpoise, or you find some Hulks, you kill them, that's great. You get some Bloodlust, you've killed ships worth way more than your fleet's worth in value, that's wonderful. But at some point, that gets boring, right? If you kill an Ishtar, you go next door. You kill an Ishtar, you go next door. You kill an Ishtar. You keep killing Ishtars. I mean, that's fun, but sometimes you need to find something that will actually shoot you back, right? And it's about finding that balance. You want to find an enemy fleet that you can fight, and the keywords are one that you can fight. If you are out in 20 Merlins and you see Horde Standing coming at you with 100 people, don't try to fight Horde Standing with your Merlins. But maybe you come upon a small gang Maybe you find like Desync or some of the other Thera people that are out wandering around with like 5 of them. That's a good fight to take. Or maybe you find just a couple Ratters in a pocket that'll try and fight you with a few Marauders. That's a good one to try and take. So on your fleets, kill some Ishtars, sure. Kill some Miners. Get that warm up. But at some point you want to actually fight things that shoot back. So try to find that moment when you can find things that will shoot back at you and actually be a challenge. But not impossible. Yeah, I swear I'm better at this now, but early on I used to whelp a lot. Like I would take fights that we knew would lose. And I would tell people that. I'd say, okay, that's 4 Marauders and there's 20 of us in frigates. We're gonna go and we're all gonna die, but maybe we'll kill one of them first. Try not to do that. But if you are going to do that, do it in Merlins, because Merlins are cheap and nobody cares. Okay, that's the end of that one. Target calling. Here's the big fun one I promised. There's a lot I can say here about target calling. There's a lot I can say, and at the same time, I'm not going to say a lot. I'll try and explain what I mean by that as I go through. The key message I want you to take away from target calling is what I have here in the subtitle. The number one thing with target calling is that you keep calling. My biggest pet peeve with FCs is FCs who freeze up and go quiet and don't call a target because they're scared. Option paralysis is a very real thing, right? We see 100 different things to choose from and we just freeze. We don't know which of these 100 should we pick. You can't do that as FC. You need to tell people what to shoot. I don't care if you tell them to shoot the wrong thing. As long as you tell them to shoot something, you're going to be better off than saying nothing. So the biggest thing as an FC is you need to keep talking. Don't die quietly. I saw that die quietly there in chat earlier. Dying quietly is a great thing to tell your fleet mates, but as the FC, you need to be talking constantly during a fight. You need to be telling them what to shoot. So in this section, we're going to go over the big secret, which is basically what I just said. We're going to talk about the decisions, and then I will actually go through some ideas of things that you should shoot and things you should not shoot and things to keep going there. So yes, the big secret, as I said, it's the most intimidating thing about FCing, but there's no secret. You just need to pick something. I know when I started FCing, as I said in my journey, I flew PvP fleets for over a year before I FC'd. I had been on hundreds of PvP fleets before I ever FC'd. And this was part of it, was I was not sure, okay, there's 20 enemies on grid. How do you tell them what to shoot or who to shoot first? There is no secret. There is no magic answer there. You just tell your fleet to shoot one enemy, and then you tell them to shoot the next enemy. That's all you do. You pick a target, you shoot it until it dies or until it's not dying, and then you pick a new target. You don't freeze up. You don't go quiet. You just tell people to shoot something. Of course, there's more nuance to it than that. We'll get into it on the next slides. But as a whole, don't freeze up. Don't go quiet. Tell your fleet what to shoot. And yes, in chat there, a stupid something is better than a clever nothing. Yes, I'm fully on board with that. So what kind of things should you shoot? There's decisions you have to make. What's in range to shoot? This is especially important for brawly ships. If you're in brawly ships and there's one ship close to you and then a bunch that are far away, well, hey, you should probably shoot the thing that's close to you because burning to the things far away is going to take some time and get you killed along the way. You should think, are there ships that could really make a big difference? Something like E-War, you know? If there's 10 ships and one of them is an E-War ship, I would usually shoot the E-War ship first. Is there something that's a specific threat to your fleet? You know, is this a fleet of mining ships and there's one DPS ship with them? Well, let's kill that one DPS ship first. Another thing to think of, we talked about earlier a bit with Logi, is can we out DPS the Logi reps? This is something we run into at times, especially in uni fleets where we're flying Merlins or things like that, where sometimes the enemy Logi is going to do more than we can damage, so we can't out DPS them, so we have to be creative. I'll talk about solutions for that in a minute. So generally, if you're trying to pick what to go for, look for control targets first. If I am looking at an enemy fleet, If we're at 0 with an enemy fleet, it's 20 versus 20 or 10 versus 10 or whatever. I'm going to look for what has some E-War or control there that could really mess our day up. So if they have a curse there, for example, curse is very big on neuting, or if they have something like a Lachesis or an Arazu that could really do long points or tackles and trap people, I might call those targets first primary because I want to get rid of that. I want to stop the things that are going to ruin our day. Logi is a good one to go for, right? We kill the healers first. That's something we do. Well, all MMOs, all RPGs. That's the way we kill healers first, because if you're shooting something else, they're just going to heal it. So cutting through Logi first can be very useful. People out of position. This one is a useful one once if you're got a good understanding of 3D space, if you're able to zoom out and see the battlefield, sometimes you'll see there's one enemy ship that is far away from the rest of them. Somebody that did not anchor up, or someone that turned their prop mod off, or someone that, they just messed up in some way and they are far away from the rest of their fleet. That's a good person to go shoot. Lots of times I will just take a look and I'll say, okay, I'm having trouble killing most of their ships because their Logi's healing them. But hey, that one Drake over there is out of range of all their Logi. Let's go kill that one Drake. So you take a look around there. You can also look for things like glass cannons or easy kills. Something like earlier I talked about how a cormorant will die to one shot. Yeah. If you see like some Nagas or cormorants or something that has no tank on it that's nearby, sure, call that as something. If you can kill it very quick, if you know it will die quick, yeah, it doesn't hurt to kill that, get it out of the way. This last one's a bit more meta, but you can also look for people that are off tank, right? This one requires a bit more gamemanship knowledge. But if you're having trouble against a little shield fleet with shield logi, but you see they have maybe like a Magus or another armor ship with them for links, kill that armor ship. You know they're not going to get logi as well. Oh, when I talked about control, E-War and control, by control I also meant bubblers there and scepters. So sometimes the option is not to fight at all, right? But if they got bubblers, they're going to trap you and make you fight. So killing their bubblers can be useful. Risky targets. So there are some things that you don't want to shoot first. So there are some targets that are just naturally a lot tankier. Hicks are very tanky usually. They're set up because they cannot receive logi when they have their hick bubbles up. So if you're trying to get rid of control in a hick, it can work, but it's going to tank the hell out of you. So you got to test your DPS there. This is a bigger picture thing, but this is part of the lesson in whelping is that you need to know what your fleet can do. If you've never FC'd before and you're new to Merlins, it might be hard to tell what you can kill with 20 Merlins. Can 20 Merlins break an Onyx? Maybe. Maybe not. You got to try it to test out. So this is why we whelp fleets, because we take these fights to see. Okay, my whole fleet died, but now I know if I only have 10 Merlins, we are not going to break an enemy hick. Or with 10 Merlins, we're not going to kill a Marauder. So we're not even going to bother shooting the Marauder because they're just so tanky. There are some ships that are notoriously bait as well. Lots of times Praxis and Gnosis will be hull tanked. So they will be set up so you think you're doing well, and then you get into hull and they stop dying anywhere near as quick. And while you're shooting them, the rest of the fleet is killing you. So I usually don't try to kill Praxis and Gnosis in an enemy fleet unless they're, on their own or one of the lone ones. It will depend a lot there. If you're flying brawling ships, I would not prioritize the smart bombing enemies as well. So if they've got a couple that are smart bombing, I would try to shoot things away from the smart bombs. If that's all that's left, then that works. Yeah. Again, I don't have a magic answer for you here. As much as I would love to sit here and say you should always shoot this first or shoot that next, every situation is going to be unique. And the way you get better at it is you just keep doing it. So you need to lead some fleets, you need to take your Merlins, and you need to fight these enemies, and you need to see what can you kill, what can you not. And then, as Raven said up in chat there, if you message back, you do a debrief at the end. So you take your 20 Merlins, and with your 20 Merlins, you try to kill, you try and kill a golem. Maybe you kill him, maybe you don't. Afterwards, you talk to your fleet, and you ask, do you guys think we could have killed him? If we'd done this differently, could we have? We do these things to learn, and they all come with experience. The last of the risky targets to watch out for are sinos. Sometimes you're in a fight and it's actually like a fair fight and it's going decently, and then a sino comes and ruins your day. So keep an eye. I know in Bomber's Bar, what Bomber's Bar will do is they'll try to kill the sinos before things come through. I'm going to tell you, in a uni fleet, you probably won't have the DPS to do it. Most of our fleets, you can kill a Narazu or a Falcon or Pilgrim or Rapier. You can kill them all. Yeah, it's doable, but it will take 10 or 20 or 30 seconds, and their Sino fleet will come through and be with you. So keep an eye for Sinos. Always keep an eye out. When you see one lit, you can have the fleet align out, see what comes through. Maybe you can still fight it. Maybe it's going to be 20 marshals. Who knows? Sinos are interesting. But yeah. Things to know as well. You need to know your fleet's optimal gun range. So if you're flying the same as most of your DPS, check. Load your different ammos, see what range you can fight at. Know what's feasible to shoot based on your range. If you've all got guns that shoot at 40 kilometers and you have enemies 60 kilometers away, you're not going to want to call those as targets unless you can burn over towards them. So try to find enemies that are within 40 kilometers. Or tell the fleet, hey, micro warp drive's on, we're burning over there. You need to know where your fleet physically is. This was something that happened to me a lot in that big PC9 final battle. I was FCing in a Lachesis while I had Feroxes behind me, and my Lachesis went about 50% faster than the Feroxes. So I kept calling primaries that were like 20 kilometers away from me, and then I'd look and the fleet was all way behind me and the targets were out of range for them. So you have to keep an eye that you are close with your fleet. Again, if you're flying the same ship as the rest of your fleet, you should, as long as they're anchored, they should be with you. But things happen, so keep an eye. And yeah, the sunk cost fallacy is a big thing to keep aware of. Target switching is a good strategy. You need to be willing to switch targets. You might have been shooting this Marauder for 2 minutes and almost have it dead, but it keeps ramping up and then some enemies come. You have to be able to switch off of it. A good FC will call multiple targets to be locked up. So you tell your fleet, hey, lock up A, B, and C. We are all going to shoot A. Everybody shoot A. Okay, A is not dying. Everybody, we're going to shoot B now. Switch to B. Okay, B's not dying. Switch to C or switch back to A. Don't get so stuck on shooting and killing one enemy that you ignore the rest. You need to be able to switch targets. This is a problem we've had in uni fleets in the past. I don't know how it is these days. It's been a bit since I've been on some fleets, but yeah, don't be afraid to call a target switch. If what you're trying to kill is catching reps from Logi, or if it's just too tanky, switch to something else. Try a new strategy. Yes, that's a good point from Lucky there. Yeah, if they have an assault damage control, you're going to want to target swap during that. That's the thing I talked about earlier on the retributions, where they can go invincible for 10 seconds pretty much. Yeah, so if you are fighting some assault frigates that have that, you can target switch during that. No sense shooting them for that 10 seconds. Switch to someone else, shoot them, then switch back. Like I said, there's a lot that could be said about what you should shoot, but I can't give you these answers. Like every time I'm in these situations, a lot of it is my gut or just I'm looking and picking something. Key thing is that any target is better than no target. It is so frustrating for a line member to just sit there, guns not activated, just waiting to hear what they should lock up. No. Tell people what to shoot. I would much rather shoot something that won't die than shoot nothing. Call multiple targets too. So that way you can do those switches. Tell people lock up A, B, and C. Don't just say one target. Have multiple for them to lock up and make it clear. And yeah, whelp some Merlins. Take a Merlin fleet out, try it, see what you can kill, see what you can't kill. Do it again, and again, and again. And that's what I have for target calling as a whole. As I said, there's no secret. It's It's experience, it's knowing a few things like what might die easier, but really it's you have to get out there and you just have to do it. And the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. Just don't die quietly. Please don't die quietly. Okay. Question about the recording. I'll share it on the YouTube later. It'll show up in pink class when I do, but it'll be in there in the next few days. Okay, I have 2 sections left here to go through. We're going to talk about winding the fleet down and what you do after. So, you've gone out, you've taken your fleet, you've gotten in some fights, you've killed some stuff, you found some content, maybe you died, maybe you survived. It is your job as FC to get people home. We do not want to abandon people. It doesn't matter. We're getting people home. One way or another, your job is to get people back to Jita or Korsiki, or at the very least HiSec. If you get people into mainland HiSec, you can just stand down there. There's a few ways to do that. You can whelp the fleet, of course. That's the way I do it a lot of the times is I'm like, okay, it's time to go home. Let's find a fight to take and we'll take the fight. It's not always the best move. It's not financially, doesn't make sense. As I said, don't abandon the fleet. One way you can get back home when you're out in the depths of nullsec, you can go through Thera. Again, use the Eve Scout bookmark folder, find the closest Thera, get people into Thera, then from Thera, just get them back to HiSec. Easy peasy. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Pochvin. Pochvin's usually the way I try and get people home. I like going through Pochvin myself. Pochvin's quick, it's easy. If you know what you're doing, you can get back to Jita in like 5 minutes. For Pochvin, the key thing is you just can't have a timer. So you got to wait out. You got to make sure you have no red timer. You use a border filament. Those ones max out at 15 people. So if you have more than 15 people, you're going to have to split your fleet up. You split up, you have a max of 15, you take a border filament, and then you have somebody scan down a wormhole to get you out. This is an image that I stole from Lecram's class on exploration last year. Highly recommend you check it out. The recording is somewhere around. I can dig up if we need it. But yeah, this just shows you how close to Jita you can go from a wormhole in each system. So if you can find the HiSec wormhole in Como, Sakenta, Arvasaris, Nani, or Senda, you will be within 5 jumps of Jita if you find the HiSec wormhole there. If you take a border filament, you will end up either directly in one of those systems or at worst 2 jumps away from one of those systems. So I always recommend the border filament because it will get you as close as possible to one of those systems. Pochvin, great way to get home. It's not without dangers. Lots of times there are gate camps in Pochvin, or you will find people camping those HiSec holes. So don't relax as soon as you get to Pochvin, but it is a good way to get home. I thought I had one more in there, but yeah. Yeah, generally Thera or Pochvin to get the fleet home or dying. You could also gate home depending on how far from HiSec you are. Sometimes you just gate people from nullsec to HiSec. There's a question. What about filament out of Pochvin? So you can take filaments to get out of Pochvin. The downside of that, though, is you have to wait 15 minutes to filament again. So you take a filament into Pochvin and you get a timer for 15 minutes before you can filament out of Pochvin. So you got to have your fleet like take a break for 15 minutes, which kind of sucks right at the end of the fleet. In terms of filaments to leave Pochvin, there's 2 types. You have the extraction filaments, or you have the Divana ones. If you take an extraction one, I think proximity they might be called, that will be like taking the wormhole. So if you're in one of those green systems and you take the proximity filament, it will take you out to a good system. However, those filaments are expensive. If you take the normal Divana glorification filament, it takes you to a random one. You might end up in low sec. It's not guaranteed to be high sec. There. Yeah, your filaments could be scanned down. Yeah, that's a new mechanic that came in the last few months, that now they can scan your filaments while you're filamenting. But yeah. Yeah, as a whole, it's usually quicker just to have your scouts scan down one of the HiSec wormholes in these systems. Lots of people keep reships in Pochvin so they can scan them as well. I've got herons in most of these systems, so I can just reship into a heron and scan a hole quick. It's good use of the flight deck herons, by the way. Get a free flight deck heron in Korsiki, take a Pochvin filament, dock it up, death clone home. Easy. Yeah. Debriefing. So, yes, you got your fleet home. Your fleet is back. You have made it to Jita. Maybe you died. Maybe you made it back alive. Who knows? We're here in uni, right? We're here to learn. Everyone here is trying to learn and become a better pilot. Key part of that is debriefing afterwards. Talk about what happened. A lot of things I say are optional for FCs to do. I think debriefing should be mandatory, honestly. I think if you're leading a fleet in uni, you owe it to people to at least spend 5 minutes on what happened. You might have people that are brand new to PvP and have no idea what just happened. So I think you should talk it through with people. It gives you a chance to answer questions, summarize what happened, ask for feedback at AARs. So yeah, I do a quick summary of what happened at the end. So once my fleet is safe in high sec, I'll just do a minute and be like, hey, so we were going to take that fight, but then the enemy signed in another ship and it was too big of a fight for us to take. So we decided to run and we patch and film into home instead of taking a losing battle. I'll just say a quick summary like that. I usually try and explain why I did things so that people that are learning can figure out how. So give them some tips, say, okay, we did take this fight because we thought we could win, but then it changed. Or I told everyone that we should shoot the Logi first because I wanted to kill the healers. And yeah, open it up to questions. Let people ask questions if they have any. You can do both formal and informal feedback. Informal feedback, you just ask people what they thought. People will say, hey, I had a good time. Thanks for the fleet. We do have an FC feedback form as well. The benefit of that is that it is anonymous, so some people will feel more comfortable sharing their feedback anonymously. They might not feel comfortable saying it in front of 20 people or saying it to your face, but they'll say it in a form. If people fill out the FC feedback form, it goes to a channel here in Discord that anyone on the FC team can see. It's a great chance for us to discuss stuff. Lots of times we discuss the feedback forms that come in and how people can improve there. And AARs. AARs are the after action reports. We have a section here in Discord for them. I'm putting right at the top, do as I say, not as I do. I write notoriously long AARs. I like to write. I like to relive the whole fleet and include every little detail. That's just what I like to do. So I write them that way. Don't do it that way. Don't look at my AARs and think, oh God, this is so much work. I don't want to do this. You don't have to do that. If you just post a battle report and a couple sentences about what you chose to do or how the fight went, that is a good enough AAR. You do not have to go out and say all, you don't have to write paragraphs and paragraphs and give it blow by blow of everything. No, no, no. I do that because I like it. Again, I do not recommend that unless that's what you want to do. You can get battle reports by going to Zkill. If you click on related, it will show you their version. You can also click on the battle report link in there and it will show you theirs. One thing I'd recommend if you do make a battle report is trim the time. I get very annoyed when someone makes a battle report and leaves it as the default 3-hour window, and then later on someone else fights in that system and that shows up on our battle report. So trim the time down. If your fighting ended at 20:02, have your battle report time end at 20:05 or 20:10. Don't get the fights later on in there. There's other sites you can use. You can use Roam Report. That will give you the list of all the kills from everyone in the fleet during the time. There's that Eve Roam report, which is a really nicely formatted one that worked really well for forums, but I don't think it's been updated for Discord. So I don't use that anymore, but I really liked it. Personally, when I write AARs too, I like to talk about learnings and reflections. So I type in there, what did I learn from this fleet? What are my reflections on it? What did I think went well or didn't go well there and such. Again, you can write a couple sentences and that is good enough for an AAR. You can write a full essay-length one if you like I do, but you don't have to by any means. Okay, and finally, number 10, do it again. For those that were around last year, they might remember Francie for a while was doing an FC backseat program where he would backseat FC for someone, like he would come and be your 2IC, help you out, walk you through everything. He did it for my first fleet. He did it for many, many people. His biggest complaint that he shared with me, and I echo this complaint because I have had the same issue when I have 2IC'd for other people, is that people go, they lead a fleet, they have a good time, and then nothing. They never do it again. Which, okay, fine. If you try FCing and you don't like it and you never want to do it again, that's okay. You don't have to. But if you do enjoy it, if you had a good time, you should capture that momentum. You should keep it going while you enjoy it. You finished the fleet, you had a good time, put another fleet on the calendar for next week. Keep it going. Um, don't just leave it. I don't think Brennan's here, but Brennan did a great job of this. So Brennan went out on his first fleet. He led it. He had a lot of fun. He scheduled one for the next week. He did it again. And after that, he scheduled a fleet for every single Sunday. And now he's been doing Sunday fleets for months and months now. He has this regular fleet that happens every week, and it's a great one, just because he keeps that momentum alive. Just please, if you enjoy FCing, keep the momentum alive. Don't do one and just never do another. If you want to get better at FCing, ways you can do it. You can record yourself. There are FCs who record every single fleet they do. One of our old FC managers who left the uni last year, Archimedes, he has recorded every single fleet he's ever FC'd. He has a recording of on his computer. I've tried this a time or two. I personally am not a big fan of it. I like recording the fights, but when it's just like an hour of us gating around and killing Ishtars, that's not exciting to record. Keep in mind, you are supposed to ask people's permission before you record them as well. So if you are capturing audio, you should let the fleet know first. I have my recording set up in OBS, so only my microphone is captured. So my fleet recordings are me talking and then a lot of silence and then me talking again, but that's okay. And I do note that some people hate watching themselves play Eve. Some people, they create a recording, they go back, they look at it, and they're like, oh no, I did this, it was dumb, or I was too zoomed in, or I should have shot this instead. Don't feel bad about that. You can get over that. It's fine. The way you get better is you review and you get better, right? You need to look at what you did wrong and learn from it. Professional sports teams watch game day footage. They watch their old recordings. You got to do the same thing if you want to get better. I skipped the first one. OBS guide. If you look on the wiki, there is a guide for how you can set OBS up for recording as well, if you're not familiar how to record. Windows also has built-in recording software too. Oh, that is the end there. Okay, I didn't put any big dramatic finishing slide. Okay, yeah, so there was a lot of info. Look at that, 2 hours, 10 minutes we went. Okay. I'm going to open it up for your Q&A for a bit here because I know a lot of questions have come in throughout. Let me just catch up on what's been going in here. Yeah, take any criticism as positive. Yeah, if you are filling out feedback forms for others, try to leave constructive feedback. And yeah, when you are receiving feedback, take it in stride. Don't let it personally affect you. Try to think logically about what they're saying. Yeah, you do not need to do written AARs. Yeah, written AARs are just a nice to have. Some of us do them, some people don't. Some like talking about it as a group, some like writing them. I personally like writing them, others talk. It works. Can I schedule a fleet for faction warfare? Yes, yeah, of course, yeah. The way Eve Uni is set up, anyone is welcome to schedule a fleet anytime. Yeah, you do not need any special permissions or roles. If you want to lead a fleet for something, you can lead a fleet for it. We do have an FC team that you can join that will help with resources and discussions and things like that. To do that, there's a link somewhere around. I can try and find after this. But yeah, they usually have someone backseat you for your first fleet, just so that they can be there to help out and make sure you're okay. But yeah, as a whole, if you want to FC a fleet, just create an event, ping it in ping PvP. Say, hey guys, let's go PvP. They'll join you. And yeah, it's always good. Even if you just do that, you'll probably have some experienced people that come along and can help out. Yeah, I did record this talk and it will be on YouTube. So yes, don't worry about that. Who do we contact in the FC team for a backseat? I know Iron Ludwig was organizing it a lot before. Suro might be doing some of it now. I'm not sure. Let me see. They've been changing some stuff around. Ah, thank you, Niswet. Yes, Niswet has forwarded the FC info. Thank you. So that's in chat there. So Cassie asks, yeah, for those who like to study, are there resources to determine what targets should be called first? Yeah, so that's the issue that I've found. Um, I've watched FC training videos from multiple corporations and alliances, and nobody really has a good, straightforward, in this situation, shoot this first, because every fight is different, right? It's kind of that million decisions slide I had back there, was that, you know, maybe you should shoot the thing that's closest to you, or maybe you should shoot the thing that's healing the other stuff. Like, there are way too many variables to decide what you should shoot first in any given situation. So I can't just like give you a priority list of this is always what you should shoot first. So for target calling, it's really just an experience thing. You just tell people to shoot something and you tell people to shoot something again. Mhm. Exactly. Always be calling. Yeah. And yeah, as I said, with uni here, everyone's here to learn. Even if you call, I'm doing big air quotes here, the wrong target, you're still calling a target, and we can talk about afterwards why it was the wrong target to call. But as long as you're calling a target, people are going to be happy. The people want to shoot their guns. It's just so frustrating when we can't shoot our guns. And yeah, hindsight is always 2020, right? We could pull up a recording of a fleet and I could look at a list on my overview and say, okay, in this position, I should have called this target primary. But when you're in the heat of the moment and you've got 20 ships there to shoot at and you have 20 people sitting there listening for you to tell them who to shoot, you're not always going to make the perfect decisions. And that's fine. As long as you just keep telling people what to shoot, that's all that matters. And yeah, if you do get overwhelmed, you can always ask your 2IC to take over. Hopefully they are someone who can do it. Okay, any other questions about FCing as a whole? I know we went through a lot of stuff today. Like I said, we had the 10 different sections. So any questions about any of that in there?